Ladies and gentlemen, we have one last sort of Q&A moment with you this evening. We'd like to welcome up our colleague, Joe Sonka. Joe is here on behalf of the Louisville Courier-Journal. He's our most recent Pulitzer winner. And I want to provide a little tiny bit of context. Hi, Joe. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You might know the name of the Courier-Journal for any number of reasons, but mostly because they are the main newspaper of record urgently covering the Breonna Taylor case, and they have been literally since the start. And so Joe and that newsroom have been like actively covering just minute to minute everything about that case. But Joe is here to talk about something that happened in December that really changed the way, I mean, hopefully the people in Kentucky understand their state leadership. And so with that, Joe, your story was about the then governor of Kentucky and some truly jaw-dropping things he did on his way out. Kind of bring us briefly into the start of the story.
So it's common for governors at the end of their term to issue lots of pardons. They have that power under the Constitution that's unchecked. But Governor Matt Bevin, after he lost his re-election bid last November, in the days, in his final days before he left office in December, he was really unique in just how many norms he broke around pardons and commutations. One was the volume. In those final few days, he issued over 600 pardons, and these were not just low-level drug offenders who he was releasing out of overcrowded prisons. We're talking people who were recently convicted and sentenced for many years for extremely serious violent crimes, murders, we're talking sexual assault of children. And also, people were totally caught off guard about this. Prosecutors weren't consulted. The family members of the victims weren't talked to. And in the case of one of our first stories, actually our first story, some of them came from politically connected families. There was one person sentenced to 19 years for shooting someone in a botched home invasion and robbery. Bevin pardoned this person, and his brother actually hosted a fundraiser at the governor's house a year earlier where he raised tens of thousands of dollars for his campaign. So you had prosecutors who were furious, you had the family members of victims who were furious, and even the Republican allies they had had for the past 4 years turned on them and criticized them. Called for law enforcement investigations, and eventually at the end of that month, after 3 weeks of stories, the new Republican Attorney General requested the FBI to investigate.
Holy cow. Joe, you said there were more than 600 pardons, which is like a mind-boggling number, but you said there was a lot more that was sort of mind-blowing about it. What to you was the most sort of like surprising aspect of this reporting?
I think the most surprising aspect is the information that Bevin was using to issue these pardons and commutations. After our first 3 stories, the first 3 days of really hard-hitting stories, Governor Bevin called me out of the blue and talked to me for nearly an hour, defending these pardons, some of the most controversial pardons, saying that these people were actually innocent, he was righting a wrong, suggested there was corruption in law enforcement and the prosecutors. And he ended the call with a challenge saying, if you really dig into this, you can win a Pulitzer Prize. He added that he didn't know if I write or research well enough to win it, but someone could. Well, we didn't need him.
Turns out.
Turns out. We didn't need him to make that challenge. We were going to do that anyway. And our editor, Rick Green, basically deputized half our newsroom, and we dug into it. And we found that Bevin just had fundamental facts of the case totally wrong. And it really drew into question how he was making these decisions, who he was listening to, because he wasn't getting the same information or didn't have the same information as the juries that convicted them.
My gosh, no. I mean, Joe, we have to go, we have to wrap up our show, but I really want to thank you and underline this. Joe's reporting is not done, right? There's still tons of fallout with these 600 pardons. So this is still an active story. So I'll give you just a second as we kind of wrap up here, but what's next for you guys with this?
Yeah, well, the FBI really isn't talking about what they are doing or aren't doing, but we're still finding new information about the pardons over the summer. One person that Bevin commuted was federally indicted for his crime against a child. A top advisor to the Attorney General resigned days after our stories that he had advised the governor to make 2 of his most controversial pardons. And there's also a voter referendum on the ballot this fall which would amend our Constitution to say that a governor issuing pardons has to notify prosecutors and family in advance. But we're we're doing that while we look into the COVID-19, while we look into the Breonna Taylor case, which has become one of the biggest stories in the country. So even though we're not all in the newsroom together, we're still working together as a team and juggling and chasing down important stories like that.
Joe, thank you so much for your journalism, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Megan.